You can't always have a regular away mission. Sometimes you have to get chemically or surgically altered so that you can blend in with the locals. In this live stream, we will break down 6 Star Trek episodes where the crew goes undercover and we ask the question, who did it best? Let's start the show. Hello and welcome to the Savage Stream, the weekly live stream where we talk all things Star Trek. And today we are doing something a little bit different from what we've been doing for the past several weeks. Today we're talking about undercover Trek, times when the away team has to go undercover to fit in with the locals so that they are not discovered for whatever reasons. So I thought it'd be fun to look at 6 episodes that just sort of pop to mind where such a thing happens. It happens more often in some series than others. So we are going to have a couple repeats as far as shows, but I think it'll just be a fun conversation. So hello to everybody who's here live. Hello to everybody who's watching on the replay. And if you are watching on the replay, there are timestamps below, so you can jump ahead at any time. If you are a member of the channel, a member of the away team, drop a :barrel : in the chat so I can say, hey. In the meantime, let's get started with our first episode on the list. Season 3, Episode 4, Who Watches the Watchers? A Federation observation post accidentally becomes visible to the pre-warp Mintakans. Beverly violates the Prime Directive by saving Liko's life on the Enterprise. Ultimately, the memory wipe doesn't work, and he convinces his people that Picard is a god. Picard then asks to be shot to prove his mortality and informs them that the outpost will be removed so they can continue to develop naturally. Yes. So this episode is so funny. When I first saw Who Watches the Watchers, and I see in the chat that some people are like, oh, this is like my favorite undercover episode on the list, which how do you know that? You don't know the whole list yet. But when I first rewatched this episode for the TNG Podcast, which is a episode by episode, basically scene by scene breakdown of everything in Star Trek: The Next Generation, when we got to this episode, I had no memory of it whatsoever. It just seemed like such a forgettable episode. And then when I watched it, me and my co-host Andrea, we were like, this is actually pretty interesting. So basically the Federation, they're in some kind of like hide. So kind of like how you would watch on Blue Planet or something, or the Nature Channel, where people will hide in caves and trees and whatnot to look at lions or gazelles or like squid in the deep or whatever. That's what Starfleet was doing for the Mintakans. They wanted to see the evolution of this civilization. Okay. And for some reason, they had to be there in person. They couldn't just like spy on them with satellites like we literally can do today. And so they were in the hide, and the Enterprise came along, I think just to deliver supplies or whatever. But the holographic barrier went down just as Liko happened to be scoping around to see what's going on. So he looks in and he sees all these people with all this technology. And I think they were like Bronze Age or something like that. I don't know. They were not super technologically advanced. Not only were they not warp capable, but they were like probably horse and buggy or something. Maybe even before that. I don't even know. So when he sees all of these non-Mintakans and they've got all this technology and things beeping and whatnot, he freaks out, loses his footing, as you saw, slips, falls off the cliff, and pretty much dies. Beverly rushes over to him and is like, we can revive him because we've got future magic, right? We've got science from the future. So they beam him up to the Enterprise. So Beverly beams him up, even though that was breaking the Prime Directive, which I think is kind of funny. It's like, okay, but he fell off the cliff because he saw us, because our holodeck, that seems like it's on y'all. Anyways, whatever. I don't think Beverly was wrong at all. So beams him up, and Picard is not happy about it. And she's like, were we supposed to just let him die? Like, come on, dude. So gives him treatment. And then it's like, don't worry, we'll do a memory wipe because this always works, right? They do a memory wipe and they send him back down. At the same time, somebody from that science, the observatory, somebody from the observatory has also gone missing. And I forget the context for why he's missing, like what happened to him, but he's gone missing. So they're looking for him. So Riker and Troy have gone undercover as Mintakans to search for this guy before the locals find him and freak out that he's an alien. So they're already looking for him. Now, when they send Liko back, they're like, problem solved. He's healthy. He's fine. His memory's been wiped. We're all good. So as soon as he gets back to the planet and he wakes up, he remembers everything. But the thing he remembers the most clearly, because he was a little bit out of it, because he was like being drugged and whatever, while they were treating him. The thing he remembers the most is Picard talking to Beverly about him being healed. and it was kind of hazy, and Picard was kind of glowing with the backlight. So he just assumed that Picard was a god capable of healing death. Totally understandable. So that's what he tells all his people. He says the Picard is a god, he can heal death and all this other stuff. And so Troy and Riker overhear this and they're like, ruh-roh. So they try to counteract this. They try to be like, no, that doesn't sound true to me, and they're trying to just throw shade on this whole entire idea. But Liko's ideas are gaining traction while they're trying to distract him and keep him from thinking about the Picard. Some locals find that missing Federation guy. And he's like all, he's been out in the desert. And so he's all out of it. And they've got him like, all tied up and stuff. And they bring him. And then Liko's like, proof, this is an alien. And, the Picard wants us to kill him or something. I don't know. So Counselor Troy is like, I saw another guy just like this running that way. Everybody go and get him. So they're all like, they all got their pitchforks and their fire and stuff. And they're all running towards the caves. While they're running towards the caves, Riker snatches the Federation guy up and they run the other direction. And he's like, two to beam out, get us out of here. So they escape. Troy does not. She gets caught. So now Liko's like, okay, well, one sacrifice for the other. Now the Picard's angry that you let that alien escape. So now we have to sacrifice you to make the Picard happy. So now Picard is like, shoot, we can't let them sacrifice Troy, but we also don't want to do any more things to perpetuate this idea that I'm a god. So if we just beam her out before they kill her or something like that, that's just going to solidify everything, right? If they start using this technology that's so advanced, it's basically magic. So instead, Picard tries to talk sense into one of the other leaders. Her name, I think, is Nuria, and is like, who's actually a leader of the people. Liko's not really one of the leaders. He's just very vocal about his experiences, his UFO experience, his abduction experience. So he's gaining a lot of traction. But anyways, Picard beams her up and talks to her and is like, look, we're not really gods. We're just people like you. I'm going to take you to the sick bay, show you somebody died. So yeah, I couldn't save him. I don't have any powers. And so Nuria is like, okay, aliens exist and they have a lot of technology, but they're not gods. Okay, fine. She just accepts it like no big deal. Who would accept any of this? This would like break someone's brain, I think. But whatever. She's like, okay, fine. Take me back to my people. I'll tell them the truth. So she's trying to tell the truth. Liko's like, no, Picard's a god. Nuria's like, no, he's not. So Picard is like, I'm really not. I swear I'm not. He comes down himself. And so then Liko's like, okay, you have to prove it, to prove that you are actually mortal. I'm going to shoot you with this bow and arrow. Hey, Scott, so good to see you here. I'm going to shoot you with this bow and arrow to prove that you are, in fact, mortal. So so Picard's like, if this is what it takes to prove that I'm not a god, then shoot me through the heart. You can go for a leg or something. We couldn't just do the little cut on the hand that people like to do in the movies. We had to do, I don't know, but this was the solution. He had to take a bow and arrow to his fake heart in order to prove that he is not a god. But at the last second, Liko's daughter pushes him to be like, no, father, stop. And the arrow just like, I think it hits him in the shoulder. And when it hits him, he starts bleeding. And then Liko's like, oh my gosh, he's bleeding. There's no way he's a god. And Picard's like, I told you so. Okay, so fast forward to the last scene. Picard, I think, has this like little sling for his arms. Why does he have a sling? Can't we just hypo spray that? And then Beverly can just be like, boop, and it just like repairs the holes. I don't know. But anyways, the last scene we see, they're just all hanging out in the woods, like hanging out in the mountainy area. And they're just talking like all is well. So Picard's like, I'm sure glad we cleared that up. And they're like, yeah, us too. Have fun in space. And he's like, yeah, you guys have fun inventing like fire or whatever. And then they go back to the Enterprise and job done. So this episode is, I think it's really interesting. I like that the idea of technology so advanced that it seems like magic. That's always super interesting to me. It makes sense that it would be seen as something religious. Totally makes sense to me. I think that people are a little too just easy to believe things as far as being realistic of like, if you really met this alien or something like that, would you need more things to convince you? But whatever. We only have 50 minutes for the episode, right? Actually, I think it was like 42. We have 42 minutes for this episode. So we gotta be convinced pretty quickly so that way we can get to the end of it. I do like that we had like this voice of reason and this other person. Like I like the layers of this episode. I don't know. What do you think? Is this an episode you enjoy? Is this an episode you even remember? Was this memorable to you? Was this like a favorite? Let me know your thoughts in the comments. This is the first episode on the list, but we have 5 more episodes that I want to talk about with the same idea of going undercover. I think for this, and the final question is like, who did it best, right? I think for this particular episode, it makes sense that Riker and Troy would go undercover to search for their missing crewmen. But is there no other way to search for said crewmen? The people on Mintaka are proto-Vulcans, and the crewman who went missing looked like an Earthling. So, like, couldn't we have scanned for that? I don't know. I feel like, maybe he didn't have his comm badge and they couldn't have scanned. I don't know. I feel like there could have been a less invasive way. In addition, kind of like the step before this is, why are they on their planet in the first place? I feel like that's a little creepy. And maybe because it seems less creepy when you're staring at lions and more creepy when you're staring at people, to me, for some reason. So I do think it makes sense that Riker and Troy went undercover. But I also think they should have never had to, because the fact that they were there just seems a little unnecessary to me. Just my thoughts. Let me know your thoughts in the chat. I'm going to check the chat really quick, and then we will head to the next episode on the list. Hello, everyone. It's so good to see you. I love seeing the colons in the chat, and the colon barrel colons, and the colon baseball colons. Some barrels, yes. Okay, so PS2 Chipper actually remembers this episode. Didn't they make a movie out of this episode? Did they? Did who? Oh, yes. The Star Trek, what was that one? Resurgence? No, Insurgents? Insurrection? Was that about a colony of, I don't know. Let me know in the chat before I even say what that was about. Picard really asked to be shot to avoid Lwaxana. That's so funny. Picard should have expected godhood and turned up once a year for his tribute. Didn't they do that on Futurama? Where, like, was it Bender or Fry or something, like, had the scenario where they were seen as a god, and it had to be Bender. And he was like, yes, worship me. I am just as amazing as you think I am. PS2 Chipper says they barely had warp travel, I think, and they decided their society was not ready for interplanetary relations. You're talking about a different episode. Yeah. Pre-warp bows and arrows. These people were the bows and arrows. Yep. Doop, 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 doop. I have asked my friends and family to refer to me as the Rob. Let me know, Rob, how'd that go for you? Yeah, exactly. It might be a time to show any Vulcans. Like, maybe they could have just sent a Vulcan down instead of Riker and Troy to be like proto-Vulcans. That's a really good point, that there was just like such a more simple way. Proto-Vulcans, finally, not just proto-humans. Long live the Picard. I like this. I like the outfits and Who Watches the Watchers. I like that. Bender was a god, and it ended poorly. Kelly was a god. Yes, Kelly was a god in the Orville, which also ended kind of poorly, right? Because they did like a Where Are They Now in season 3 for the people that Kelly interacted with. And that episode was just not awesome. Okay, stones were thrown. Yeah, so maybe regular Rob instead of the Rob is the way to go. All right, let's go to the next episode on the list. Let's see if you guessed it. Season 4, Episode 15, First Contact. While conducting a covert mission on a pre-warp planet, Commander Riker is injured and taken to a local hospital, exposing his alien physiology to the locals. As the government scrambles to contain the discovery, Captain Picard and Counselor Troy begin negotiations with Chancellor Durkin and Science Minister Marasta Yale. Despite their best efforts, it becomes clear that this world is not ready for First Contact. Disappointed and discouraged, Marasta decides to leave with the Enterprise. This is another good episode. I have problems with the sexual assault part of the episode, but for the rest of the episode, it's really interesting. So let me give a little more context to what was in the video. So this planet, and this is the one you were thinking of, PS2 Chipper, this planet is like pre-warp by a matter of probably like months or something. Maybe like by the end of the year, they are going to have warp technology. And Marasta Yale is the lead scientist who's leading the warp project. Okay. So they're like so close. So Riker was sent to what's the word, to like get intel. I don't want to say infiltrate because it wasn't like nefarious. There was no bad intentions, but he was sent to see what kind of people they are. Once again, did we need to go in person? Can't we just spy on them with satellites like regular people? Like they have all this technology on the Enterprise, but maybe you have to have boots on the ground. I don't know. But anyways, Riker was sent in to kind of see what the people are like, to get a feel for how they might react to the fact that there are aliens in the universe. And I think it's interesting because how does one do that? Like, what do you, if that was your job, if your job was go to some random planet and take a temperature read to see how they might react to the fact that there's alien life, how would you even do that? Do you walk up to people and just say, hey, you ever heard of aliens? I mean, what is Riker doing exactly? How would he know this? How would he possibly know how they would react to having alien life from like hanging out on the planet for a couple of days? I don't know. But anyways, that's what Riker was sent to do. He was sent to get some kind of intelligence, but he got injured. He went missing. So Picard and Troy go to meet Marasta to say, hey, we didn't want to rush it, but we do usually like to meet with the planet's, I guess, leading scientists over the head of the planet. So they met with her to be like, okay, we're aliens exist, surprise. And you're about to have work technology. That's the point at which we can safely talk to you without breaking our prime directive. We're just moving things ahead a bit because our officer has gone missing and we would like some help finding him because we're getting kind of worried about it. So Marasta's like, yeah, sure, there's aliens, whatever. And they're like, no, we could prove it to you, I swear. Like, we'll take you to our ship. And she's like, bet, let's go. So they go up to the Enterprise and she's like, this is awesome. First of all, can you imagine walking into 10 forward? The thought of that just makes my heart want to just explode. It's so exciting, but it's exciting because I'm a fan. I don't know how I would react if this was like an alien ship full of even more aliens, like even more varied aliens than the ones that I saw before I got to the ship. And then I saw this beautiful view screen with my planet. Like, I don't know, this would blow my mind, especially as a scientist. This would blow my mind. And there's no way I could keep this quiet. There's no way I could keep this a secret. I'd be telling everybody. I wouldn't care if I look crazy. So Marasta, being the true scientist, is like, this is awesome. This is amazing. I'm going to take you to meet our planetary leader because it's Star Trek. So all planets only have one leader. So she goes to the planet's president, which is Chancellor Durkin, and is like, hey, these people are aliens. Aliens exist. Surprise. Also, they're here to talk to us because we're about to have warp travel. So yay on that. But in addition, their officer has gone missing. So we need some help finding him. So does that all sound good? And Chancellor Durkin's like, what? It's like, that's a lot of things to that's a lot of things to digest at once. But Picard does, a sequel, round 2, beams Durkin up to the ship and does the same kind of song and dance. And it's kind of like, okay, what do you think? What are you thinking? Like, we're going to move at your pace. We're going to go with first contact, whatever feels most comfortable for you, whatever way will be best for your planet to embrace us. He tells him about the Federation and joining the Federation and how awesome it would be and the benefits that they would have. And Durkin is like, well, but you won't share your technology. And he's like, yeah, I mean, we don't really, there's some stuff we share, but there's some stuff we don't share, like weapons. We're probably not going to give you that, but replicators will probably give you that, and Durkin's like, I don't know about that. And then, which I think that's the funny thing that holds him up. I think the other thing that makes more sense is I don't know if our people are ready to find out that aliens exist. I'm not sure about that. I think Durkin or Marasta or any of the locals who are kind of more in some leadership positions might have a better idea, a better read on how their people would react. Any politician probably would have a better read on how their people would react than Riker just randomly hooking up with people in bars and asking them what they think about aliens. I think this is a better strategy, but I digress. So Durkin's like, I'm not sure if my people are ready. Maybe. And Marasta's like, the world needs to know science. So while all this is going on, the administrators at the hospital are freaking out because they're like, clearly Riker is an alien. He doesn't have the right number of fingers. All of his organs are in the wrong place. Like, there's something fishy going on. And the head doctor, the chief doctor, is just like, so they put him under lock and guard. Like, they put him under guard loosely because he can't move. He's half conscious, like he's not going anywhere. So it's not like they have guards posted on the door, but they have him in a secure wing or whatever. And the chief doctor is like, I don't want to tell anybody that this is going on because then it's going to be such a big deal, right? We found alien life. There's an alien at the hospital. We're all going to come under scrutiny and, we're going to be seen as crazy. I don't know. He's thinking all of the worst things, which is reasonable, I think. But his like second in command is like, we need to say something. We need to tell the government. We need to tell the people, and again, I like this kind of dichotomy of like, how would people really react in this situation? I think some people would be like, we need to keep this a secret. I never said alien. Did you say alien? I didn't say alien. And then we need this other group of people who's like, yeah, we need to tell everybody. Like, so I like that that seemed real to me. Like, this is a real reaction. So then the government people do eventually find out. I don't know. His name's Krola. I don't know if he's like their Secretary of Defense. I don't know this guy's job. So maybe let me know in the chat. But this guy finds out, and this guy's like super paranoid, and he is sure that the aliens are here to secretly conquer them, or they have some kind of ill intent. So he's the opposite of Marasta, who's like, aliens. He's the opposite. He's like, they're coming to get us. We need to protect ourselves, yada, yada. So he goes to the hospital and he finds Riker and he gets the phaser. And he's like, he figures out it's a weapon. Of course he does. And then he shoots himself with a phaser, but he like holds the phaser in Riker's hand and pushes the trigger to make it look like Riker murdered him. So he was willing to murder himself to prove that these aliens were evil and bad and had bad intentions, because he did not want them to be accepted. He didn't want to do this Federation thing. He just really doesn't trust the Federation or any aliens. He can't wrap his head around the idea that they could have any positive intent. So when this happens, thankfully the phaser was on stun, so he was fine. But when this happened, this is what caused Durkin to say, look, if our second in command is this against the whole idea of aliens, I think that's actually a really good picture of what a majority of our population is going to feel like. So some people are going to be excited, but a lot of people are going to be fearful and anxious, and it's going to cause more harm than good. So since Picard offered, he said, hey, like, if you want us to leave, we'll leave. And so Durkin's like, yeah, I think you need to leave. Like, I don't think this is going to work. But maybe come back in 30 years or 50 years, like tell the Federation they can come on back, they can swing back around and check in on us again to see how we're doing. In the meantime, I'm curtailing all work on warp drive and all work on exploring space, because that's part of the fear. Part of the fear is not just there's aliens out there, but it's also like, if we go out into space, we'll encounter the aliens, they'll find us, they'll come back to our planet. Like, that's part of the fear. So Durkin is like, we're going to just like stop all the research on warp travel for like a good 20, 30 years. Then we can kind of slowly start up again. And that'll give us time to soften up the people, get them more used to the idea. So Picard's like, dude, totally understand. It's a bummer because I wanted you guys to join the Federation, but it's fine. We're willing to wait. And Marasta's like, what the F? She's like, my whole life's work is this warp theory stuff. And you're telling me my project will be ended. I'm going to be sanctioned, basically. She's not going to be able to talk openly about anything she's seen or experienced, obviously. Like, either people won't believe her or it's just going to cause the damage that Durkin's trying not to cause, right? Which is not what she wants. So she's like, bump this. Can I go with you guys? I don't want to stay here anymore. And Picard and Durkin look at each other and they're like, if it's what you want, enjoy. So she gets on the Enterprise and off she flies, which I think is wild. Like, I know we've had this conversation before about would you go on the alien ship? And some people are like, in a heartbeat. I couldn't imagine. Like, I wouldn't mind being on the ship or exploring the ship or something, but just like leaving my home planet forevermore to just be with people to never see friends or family again, to not see my niece and my nephews grow. I don't know. I couldn't do it, but I'm not Marasta. Let me know if you would leave. If you would leave like Marasta, if you would stay. Okay, I'm going to check the chats, and then we're going to go to the next episode on the list. See if you guys can call which one this is going to be. Yeah, Gavin, you've been calling it these last two. I don't know if you're going to call the last two, though. I have a feeling that might be a surprise. Yes, Carolyn Seymour, amazing. Oh, and I didn't say this in the first episode for Who Watches the Watchers, but the guy, Liko, is the same guy who plays Arturis in Voyager. What was that episode called? In the Voyager episode where the guy tries to kidnap the whole crew and then feed them to the Borg, whatever that episode was called, he's the guy who plays Arturis. That guy's great too. I love it when they reuse actors. It's just so fun to me. Gavin says, this is one of my favorite undercover episodes. Oh, this is my favorite undercover episode. Okay. So we had Sila's, Who Watches the Watchers, and Gavin's is First Contact. Yes, this is, Karen, the one where the planet's doctor wants to have relations with Riker. And you're right, Scott. Riker doesn't even have to try to get laid. So the chick who wants to do it with another species. Correct. Exactly, Justin. So what happened was this woman, I don't know if she was a doctor or a nurse, actually, now that I think about it, but she worked at the hospital and she knew Riker was trying to get out of there because he's trying to like escape before there's any more controversy about this alien. And by the way, in that clip I showed before where the doctors are like, your fingers don't match, your organs aren't there, Riker has all these wild theories about, oh, it's a genetic defect I've had since birth. And like he's just like lying his tailbone off in that hospital. And the doctors are like, do you think we're stupid? And so anyways, he's trying to escape before there's any more ruckus made about him, before he's discovered and things go horribly wrong. So Lilith from Cheers is in this episode as an alien. And she comes in and she's like, I've always had this fantasy of wanting to do it with an alien. Like, I've always wanted to do that, which, you know, whatever, to each his own as far as their kinks go. But this is the part that I find really creepy and cringe is she goes, okay, so if you will have relations with me, I will help you escape. So Riker's like, well, guy's got to do what a guy's got to do. Forget the fact that he's like halfway in a coma at this point. He's like, I'm down. So apparently this happens. We don't see this part because, you know, it's like children's television. It's like PG-13 or whatever Star Trek is. But afterwards, we see her like kind of fixing her outfit like, that's exactly what I wanted, which I have so many questions about that. His fingers weren't the right number of fingers. The organs weren't in the right place. So how do they know that relations are even possible? That's my question. But apparently they are, and apparently it was fun. So the thing, though, other than that being super creepy, is the second he walks out of the hospital room, like she tells him, okay, you know, as she's fixing her clothes, she's like, all right, here's the deal. Go out the door, down the corridor, 2 lefts, take the stairs, the back door is right off of that or whatever. So she gives him these instructions. He walks out the door, he gets to the end of the hallway, it is immediately captured and put back in his room. So it's like, what was even the point of that? It was the worst rescue attempt in the history of rescue attempts. So that's the only part of this episode that just creeps me out every time. I think at the time it was supposed to be really funny or charming or something, but I like very much do not find it funny or charming. I find it really disturbing. But other than that moment, other than that scene, like if that scene was deleted, the rest of the episode is pretty interesting. Okay, Dustin. I think this is one of the best episodes you can show to someone that's never seen Trek before. Other than the casual harassment, it's everything that Trek is about. And maybe even, Dustin, a little bit of the casual harassment, especially in the TNG era, especially in the TOS era. You get these episodes where you're just like, really? But also, really? You know? Also, like, yes, this is an accurate reflection of what goes on, you know? They don't have phasers yet. I know, right? They don't have phasers yet. Exactly. First Contact, the episode, not to be confused with Star Trek First Contact or First Contact. You'd react like Mark Twain. Freaking Mark Twain. Riker needs to know how those aliens ate with their bulky hands. Yeah, the hand design was really not cute. And also, not that it has to be, but it was weird mittens, but then they had like little nubs where the fingers came out of the mittens. I don't know. And it wasn't like the most gorgeous facial design ever, although Carolyn Seymour looked amazing, but it did look alien enough to where clearly Picard and Troy were not matching up, right? So they tried to put in enough ridges and forehead shapes and things like that. The hands were more subtle because you wouldn't see it unless somebody was holding up their hands to the camera. The defense minister. Okay, that's what it was. And the defense minister had to be a raging xenophobe, of course. But I guess maybe that's his job as defense minister, to just like be defensive, you know, to just like be paranoid and untrustworthy or untrusting of others. Maybe that's why he got the job. I don't know. Might as well cancel those ladies Q puts in Riker's hands in that episode because he's just offered anything he wants on this planet, at least from Lilith or whatever her name was in this episode. Stephen Miller got his whole persona from the defense minister, the Riker maneuver. At least the minister kept his hair. You guys are funny. Malcolm. Dustin. Okay. Hope and Fear. Thank you. That was the name of the episode with Arturus. I don't know why I just totally blanked on that episode name. The woman who wanted to jump Riker should have waited for Bozeman and Captain Peyton. I laughed when she called him my alien. Okay, so maybe it's supposed to be funny. As long as you don't catch an intergalactic STD like poor Harry Kim. Poor Harry. Can't get anything right? Okay. All right. So let's go to the next episode on the list. Season 1, Episode 1, Strange New Worlds. Captain Pike returns to active duty when Starfleet informs him that Una has gone missing during a mission. As this is a pre-warp planet, the away team must get physically altered before going to find number 1. They soon discover that 2 warring factions are on the brink of world destruction. So, Pike steps in, breaking the Prime Directive and giving the people another option. You know, this episode, I sort of forgot how this episode went before I put together this list. I was like, yeah, they went undercover to find Una because pre-warp something, but I didn't remember the details. So as I was going back through this episode, I was like, oh my gosh, there were so many. And I remembered Pike had a long beard and was like just cooking at home, just like taking leave because of everything that happened in Discovery, and with the Discovery jumping hundreds of thousands of years in the future or whatever, and him feeling sad about that. And also this was like top secret. So he was at home kind of sulking and he couldn't say anything about it because it was all a secret. And then Admiral April was like, we got to call you back because Una's missing. So I do remember that part. I do remember Una's missing. And then I did remember they had to get surgically altered to find her something. But as I was going back through the episode for this conversation, I was like, oh my gosh, there was so much more going on. So this planet that was pre-warp, I don't remember why Una's, like, I don't remember what her mission was that she was on, like when she went missing, but this planet had been affected by the burn, which is something that happened in Discovery. So this was very cohesive in their handoff between kind of setting up Strange New Worlds and Discovery and then sending them off on their own spinoff. So they tied the pilot together with kind of where they were spinning off from. And this planet has some, they know of maybe not warp technology, but they've like reverse engineered parts of warp technology to create more effective weapons. So this planet is at war, and classic Star Trek, the planet's like split in half. Half of them are at war with the other half. And they're just making like fiercer and fiercer and fiercer weapons. And now they're at the point where they're just going to destroy everything and destroy each other. And so Pike is trying to get Una out of there. And they're trying to kind of be secretive about it. But there's like rallies and protests and all kinds of stuff. And then as you saw in that little clip, they get discovered because Spock's Vulcan genetics for some reason doesn't take to the hypospray. So this is actually kind of nice in Strange New Worlds. Instead of getting surgically altered like they had to in TNG or in Voyager or in Deep Space Nine, in Strange New Worlds, they just get a hypospray. And they're like, and they look different, which is amazing. Like, it seems so much easier. It's kind of genius. So anyways, because Spock is a Vulcan, the serum doesn't work on him for whatever reason. It doesn't work on him as well. So while everybody else got one shot before they left the Enterprise, and that was good until they could get back to the Enterprise, Spock had to keep getting these booster shots to like keep it going. And for some reason, Spock had to be there. They already had an away team of like a ton of people, but for whatever reason, Spock had to be on the away team. So as they're trying to escape, the serum wears off. Spock is clearly an alien. Then you saw they get in this huge battle, and they try to escape. Basically, they kind of get caught, and then Pike comes clean with the planetary leaders while they're having this, big debate about, like, first they were having this big debate about should we go to war, and then Pike shows up and he's like, hey, aliens exist, surprise. Also, he tells them like the history of Earth, and he's like, my people also had this situation where they wanted to go to war, and it was a stalemate and blah, blah, blah. But there's another way, and there's a future, and there's a hope, because look at us. We've now we've reached the stars and we're communicating with other people and we've got all these different aliens who work together and da 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 da. And it's kind of like the beauty of the Federation and Starfleet and all of that is kind of what he's pitching. And then he's like, how about instead of going to war, join us, become part of the Federation, like, and be friends. And the leaders are like, but the way that they do it is they like broadcast to the whole world at one time. They just like beam everything so everybody can see what's going on. So the leaders think about it and they're like, okay, we won't go to war because the fact that there's aliens has just totally reshaped our priorities. Right now, we're no longer trying to fight over who owns what on the planet about resources or whatever, because now our eyes have been open to the whole galaxy. This is a place where we can all be. And it's actually really cool. It's a really cool idea. It's a really nice tie-in to Discovery, like the way they're kind of like pulling out threads for this episode. It talks about Prime Directive, Schmime Directive, which is what all the captains think about the Prime Directive. It talks about like the history of humanity and where it's come from. There's a lot of layers in this episode. This episode is one of the reasons why I think the first 2 seasons of Strange New Worlds was so strong, in my opinion, because it's got a lot of layers that you can really like dig through. You can just enjoy the story on the surface level, and then you can dig deeper and be like, ooh, and this and this and this and this. So this was a fun episode. And I think a perfect time to go undercover. Like, it made all the sense in the world. They were trying to save Una. Una's serum clearly has run out because she just looks like an Illyrian. Is that what she is? She doesn't look like whatever these planet people are. So yeah, they had her like in the basement of some high-tech facility. Understandable, because she's an alien, right? So anyways, yes, it is insidious like root beer. Exactly. It's so, what did he say? Bubbly and happy or something like that. New Trek is your kryptonite. Yeah, so I'm going to check the chat, and then we're going to go to the next episode on the list. I like the Amy Winehouse hair on the alien. Yeah. Oh, that's interesting. Dustin hates this episode. Do you hate this episode, or do you... We'll get to that. Okay, so Randall says, the first contact by Una's group is a few people. How are they running their ship? Yeah, so I don't think the first contact by Una's group is a few people. Yeah, I don't remember what the mission was that Una was on. I'm assuming... Yeah, I don't even remember the details of which ship she was on, how she got there, but it's the away team that got captured, not like an entire starship. I think she was on the Enterprise, and I think she took a shuttle and then went missing, or maybe she beamed down. I'm not really sure the context. I have to go and rewatch that first, I don't know, like 15 minutes of that episode. Interesting. Have you seen all of Strange New Worlds, PS2 Chipper? I'm just curious. So PS2 Chipper says, I think Strange New Worlds has nothing beneath the surface. I disagree. I mean, I think season 3 could have been better. But I think season 1 and 2 are really good. Okay, Gavin agrees. Gavin also does not care for Strange New Worlds. Have you guys seen all of Strange New Worlds though? I'm just curious. Have you seen the whole thing and then have decided it is not your cup of tea? Or did you watch 1 or 2 episodes and then decide it's not your cup of tea? Because depending on the 1 or 2 episodes you saw, it may or may not be an accurate representation. Okay, so she was on another ship investigating why they had warp bombs. Oh, okay, there it is. They had warp bombs, but they didn't have warp drive. So the question was, how did they get this future technology? And why is it in this order? Why is it being used for a weapon? That's what it was. They developed it from watching the battle in Discovery. Okay, so Gavin has watched it all and does not care for it. That's totally understandable. That is totally fair. Each show has its own flavor and style, and they are not for everyone. Yeah, a lot of people says it reminds them of TOS. I can totally see why. Bubbly and sweet. I thought they said something else, like cloy or something. Okay, so PS2 Chipper says, I won't watch full episodes because I feel like the writers lack self-reflection. I think some of the episodes are in the first 2 seasons are really good. You know, some are just fun, silly, but some I think are really good. Okay, here's the next episode, which has a bit of controversy around it. Season 3, Episode 8, 4.5 Vulcans. The Vulcan High Command requests help fixing a malfunctioning nuclear reactor on a pre-warp planet that only accepts Vulcan assistance. So members of the away team take a serum to become Vulcan in appearance and action. However, after the mission is over, these crew members refuse to transform back into humans, and chaos ensues. So this episode has a yes, cloying, thank you. This episode has a lot of mixed emotions about it for a lot of reasons. I think so. Okay, here's the context for why this was happening. There was a planet that needed some repairs to some important system, to their nuclear reactor, whatever. And even though the planet was pre-warp, the planet did have experience with Vulcans. And they explained why, but I forget why exactly. But they did have experience with Vulcans. So Vulcans could go to the planet without it breaking the Prime Directive, or without them being like, oh my gosh, aliens, because they knew Vulcans existed. That was totally fine. They didn't know about humans and all the other stuff, Bolians, whatnot. But they did know that Vulcans existed. So they were like, okay, we need to go. Yes, Doug, the best. We need to go and we need to fix this nuclear reactor, but only Vulcans can go. And apparently on the entire Enterprise, Spock is the only Vulcan. So they were like, okay, so to do this, we need to have an away team where everybody's a Vulcan. Well, in a previous episode, they had gotten this serum that can turn you into a Vulcan, that could turn Spock back into a Vulcan, because he had been turned from half human, half Vulcan into full human by this alien species. That's kind of like a ball of light. So they gave them even more technology to turn him back into half human, half Vulcan. So Nurse Chapel was like, we can take that serum and kind of like manipulate it a little bit so that it turns humans into Vulcans, because that's what it did for Spock, right? It turned him into half human, half Vulcan. So they injected all those people, and then all those people turned into Vulcans. And then they went down, they fixed the reactor. Now, we don't actually see any of this. We just hear this on the comms. We hear like they've gone down, and somebody's reporting. They're like, okay, so fixing that reactor should take at least, 5 hours. I think it's Pelia or something. It should take 5 hours, or however long it should take. It takes them like 30 seconds. You just hear them go, okay, we're done. Bring us back up. Like, they're done. So they come back up, and then they're like, you know what? We don't want to go back to being human because it's so much better being Vulcan. And they're like, it's amazing. I have such clear thoughts. I have such, I'm not overcome by all these emotions. Life is just better. It's easier. It makes more sense. And I think my read on this was that they were, because it's like science future magic. So my read on it was that they took all of Spock's lessons, learnings, maturity, beliefs, opinions, and that has now been incorporated into them. So they have who they were in the past, plus who Spock is and everything he is at this point. That was my reading of it, because to a lot of people's good points, like if you go and watch Dustin's channel on YouTube, if you go to @DustinWing on YouTube, there's a whole conversation about this episode and every episode of Strange New Worlds for this last season. But to other people's points, if you had just become Vulcan this second without any of that mental training, Vulcans go through so much training to handle their emotions, to have that logic. They're not born with logic. They train from the time that they are born to have that logic. They're not born knowing how to control their emotions. They train to control their emotions because their emotions are so big, so much bigger than a human's emotions. They have to really like rein it in. So my read on it was that they just like copy and pasted who Spock was onto themselves and just kind of blended it with themselves. Otherwise, they would not have the training in logic. They would not have the training in emotions. They would not have all the characteristics that they had. They wouldn't have the clear-headed reasoning, because they'd be emotional wrecks, right? But also, they inherited some other things, like a just hatred for humans / non-Vulcans as being inferior and dumber, and they smell bad and all these other things. So it basically made them like super racist and just hate everybody, which makes sense too, because Spock is clearly torn, to say the least, about him being half human, and says so often about how he was looked down upon and how his mother was treated. And, because he's half human, that half of him is worse and terrible and bad, and, he's bad and all these things. So all of that makes sense to me, that they're just like parroting Spock's like lived experience, his beliefs from his lived experience, even though they don't have that lived experience. So it just is totally out of context for them, right? They just show up and they're like, I'm Vulcan, I'm better. And you're like, okay, why do you think that? So anyways, looking at it from that angle, it makes sense to me. But the other angle you could look at it as is that anybody who becomes Vulcan automatically becomes these horrible people, just horrible people who hate everybody. They think they're better than everyone. And for whatever reason, they already have the mental abilities. They already have the, the emotional abilities. They already have all these abilities that would take years and years and years and years. Like Vulcans live for hundreds of years. So this would have taken a long time for them to get, and they just got it instantly from like the hypo spray. So if that's the case, it's really an awful message. Not only is it a message that Vulcans are the worst, but it's a message that they're genetically the worst. Like they're born the worst. They're born to think they're better than other people, which is terrible. That being said, this episode also has this really fun love story between Una and this Vulcan named Doug that is just like, it's just the best. It's just the best to see Una be a total goofball. And it's so much fun to just see her fall apart, and Spock is trying to like, it's a good time. Like that's really, and I think that's why a lot of the, it's like Una's ex. So that's why a lot of the, I think, pictures for this episode is just like pictures of Doug. It's like either you see the pictures of the crewmen turned into Vulcans, or you just see pictures of Doug, because I think Doug stole the show. Like that was the best part of the whole episode. Every time you see him, it's just a delight, even to the point where they have the end credits where it's just Doug and Spock, just making you laugh. It's pretty fun. Okay. So I will check the chat on this one, and then we will go to the next episode on the list. Yeah, this is a good question. Why not send Vulcans? And there was a reason for that, because the Enterprise was closest, and the Vulcans were really far away. I forget how far away, but it was like a nuclear reactor that was about to go, nuclear, like any second now. So they had to do it right away. There was like no time to wait. Although Doug was not that far away, because he came to the ship like the next day, but that's why they couldn't send Vulcans. They had to send somebody immediately. So that's why they had the crew turn into Vulcans. So I think it's funny that you love the voiceover opening when Anson Mount read it as a Vulcan, because that was my least favorite part. Like I could not skip that intro fast enough when he's like, space, the final frontier. I was just like, oh, make it stop. It was like nails on a chalkboard. And he did it the whole way. I was like, maybe just do the first part. But yeah, I love that you loved it though, because at least one person got a kick out of it when I was like, oh, make it stop. Yeah, Pelia waiting to change was really funny, because Pelia is just a big old mess. Gavin says, this episode proved that the writers don't understand Vulcans, what they represent. Vulcans have emotions. They are not emotionless. That is true. Vulcans have even more emotions. They have like bigger emotions that they're containing so that it doesn't envelop them. Well, in TOS, Spock was the first Vulcan in Starfleet, but Kirk's captain is Vulcan in Strange New Worlds. So I don't know, right? So, I mean, first doesn't mean only, maybe? Question mark? I don't know. Because Worf was the only Klingon in Starfleet, like it seemed ever, right? Like even after him, like no Klingon was trying to join Starfleet. So exactly. It was the only ship in range. Exactly. This, they did not say, but I would assume so, that they had the ability to mind meld. But they didn't say if they got that ability, but because they're Vulcan, I would assume so. And then they made a big point of saying like they're fully Vulcan because of the serum, whereas Spock is only half Vulcan. So they were even crapping on Spock for being half Vulcan, just like he grew up remembering hearing, right? Gavin says, I can't accept Pelia as a character. She was invented as a plot device. So when they time traveled, she could be there because she's old. I mean, technically everything's a plot device because that's how stories work. But I think Pelia came in not just for the time travel episode. She came in because she had to replace Hemmer. Like they lost their chief engineer character, so they needed a new chief engineer character. And they wanted a bridge between Hemmer and Scotty. And especially since Scotty's like young Scotty, just like Uhura's young Uhura, then he couldn't be the chief. He couldn't come in to replace Hemmer, right? So I don't think Pelia was brought in just for a time travel episode. I think she was brought in as the bridge between that first engineer and then the engineer that like we're excited, that we know and love. And they're just like keeping her around as comic relief. And because she's old, they were like, let's put her in the time travel episode. That's my thought. Uhura was able to initiate a mind meld, so they did have abilities. Oh yeah, right. They did it. They did say. I thought they did say yes. Uhura mind melded with her boyfriend to like. It was weird because I didn't know they could do that, but she mind melded with her boyfriend to like make her boyfriend more Vulcan. How did she do that? I don't know, but she did that. And then he was more like like her. And then they were like getting along better because they were both kind of Vulcan-y. It was weird. Yeah, they were instantly Colinard. Carol Kane is absolutely wonderful. A great actress, a terrible character. Pull my finger, and then what happens? Flatulence. Yeah, Uhura mind melded with Beto. Okay, so let's go to the next episode on the list, which is our second to last. Season 5, Episode 6, Whistlespeak. Burnham and Tilly travel to a pre-warp planet to follow a clue trail and to repair a failing device that a Denobulan scientist placed long ago to heal the planet's lethal drought. They both participate in a local ritual race that tests devotion, endurance, and faith. When they discover that the winner must sacrifice their lives in order to bring water to the dry land, Burnham decides to break the Prime Directive, restore the technology, and then continue their journey to find their missing clues. So this is a lot like a redo of Who Watches the Watchers. I could have done this as a double take. It's definitely got some differences. Or it could be a redo of, what's that episode from TNG where we meet Worf's brother suddenly that we never knew he had? It'll come to me. So, or it might be a redo of that one. So basically, this planet has a unique type of weather where it kind of goes into this crazy amount of drought. So this Denobulan scientist way back in the day, like thousands of years ago, I don't even remember, I think they said maybe like 1,000 years ago or 800 years ago, 900 years ago, they said, installed all these weather stations all over the planet to stabilize the planet's weather. This Denobulan scientist, this was their passion. This was their type of work that they did, was controlling the weather on planets. So they installed all these towers all over the planet that could stabilize the planet's weather to give it a more consistent cycle so that there was enough rain, enough water, there was like dry seasons, hot seasons. So it was stabilized. But now the technology is failing after like 1,000 years. A lot of the towers have gone dark, and everywhere the towers have shut off. By the way, these towers are like these big spiritual towers at this point, and they have this huge mythology within the culture because they bring water, they bring rain, and the people know they do, even though they don't know how exactly it works. And then the technology pieces are kind of buried underground. So a lot of these towers have broken, or they've cracked and started leaking crap into the water table and stuff like that. And by the time that Discovery shows up, there's only like one tower working or 3 towers working or something like that. But you can see the whole planet is like dry, barren, and dead. And then there's like one little patch of green where this one tower is like still going strong. I think there was 5 towers and like 4 of them have stopped functioning or something. And anyways, they want to repair this tower. And they have this big debate about should we repair it or should we not because of the Prime Directive. And so there are people saying like, you can't repair the towers, Prime Directive, like the planet's got to be on its own. They're not warp capable. But then someone else made the argument, which I totally agree with, I think it was Burnham, who was like, the Prime Directive was already broken when that scientist put the towers there in the first place. Now we have an obligation to maintain that technology. Like, if it was already broken, Prime Directive has been broken. But we can't just sit back and let this fail and let everybody just like suck, just die from no water, which is exactly what Picard did in that episode, whose name I can't remember. So they're like, okay, we need to go and figure out like where exactly are the units buried or wherever they are so that we can like put in new power cells or whatever. But they want to go undercover just in case they run into the locals. What I think is kind of smart about the way that they did this is, if you notice in the video, the alien look was really just like little drawings on their face, like little squiggles right here. So they didn't do prosthetics. They didn't do big ears or ridges or anything crazy. This is not going to be a Riker situation where you can just look at his fingers and be like, you don't have the right number of fingers. You're an alien. All they need to do is put little squiggles on their face and boom, they blend. So their alterations were not that extreme. However, they have 2 other pieces that I think are so cool, so genius. One is they have a subcutaneous communicator. So they put their communicator in their skin instead of having them carry around something or hitting their comm badge, which is really smart because that's kind of where Riker went wrong, right? He had brought his phaser with him, and then his phaser got found, and and then it caused problems. So I think that's kind of cool. The second thing that they had that was so cool was they had a inner eye tricorder. So instead of carrying around tricorders, they just could like look at stuff and it would be like choop, 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 and it would like show them stuff. That was just, I'm so geeking out over that kind of technology. It's just so exciting and fun. And it feels like an evolution of the kind of technology we've seen so far on Trek. You're like, yeah, why wouldn't they have it under their arms like that they could communicate? Why wouldn't they have it like connected to their eyes or something like that? And the way they installed them was through the transporter. So they didn't get surgically altered in sickbay, just when they were transported and they rematerialized, their eyes were tricorders and their skin already had communicators in them. Genius. Imagine getting your wisdom teeth taken out with a transporter. You just go in, come out, no wisdom teeth. Magic. Yes, please. I will take 2. So anyways, they go and they meet these people and they see that everybody is, dying of thirst basically. And the people have created this ritual where they have to do this race, and then whoever makes it to the race goes into the tower and they activate it from inside. And then when the tower is activated, it sucks all the oxygen from inside of the tower to like go into the clouds and to seed the clouds and to create rain. So it is a sacrifice. Whoever wins the race, their reward is to sacrifice themselves to the water gods so that they can have water. So Tilly wins the race, but also a young not child. They're young, but they're not a child, maybe 20, maybe like a 20-year-old or something, maybe 17. I don't know. They're older than they're legally grown, I think. Anyways, they both win the race. And so they're inside of the tower, and the younger person is like, this is how this goes. We're just going to sit and just like let emptiness surround us or whatever. And Tilly's like, what? No, burn them, get me out of here. She was like, no. I didn't sign up for any of that. Why do we have to be inside? We don't have to be on the inside. We can do this from the outside. So anyways, Burnham figures out what's going on. And she's like, okay, prime directive, schmime directive. I'm not letting Tilly suffocate to death in there. We're going to figure this out. So that person's dad knew how the technology worked. Like, he also didn't totally get it, but he knew there was this valve that you turn to shut it off when it's done. But he's out there grieving for his child who's in there, who won the race. And so Burnham is like, basically breaks the prime directive by trying to explain to him carefully that she is actually an alien. Aliens exist, surprise. And we're here and we're trying to, like, she's explaining all this stuff. We're not gods. We're just regular people. So that's the part that's a lot like Who Watches the Watchers with Picard giving his whole speech about I'm mortal and I can die and all this other stuff. And in the end, they do finally convince him somehow, and she's got like medical teams beaming in and stuff. So they do finally convince him to flip the switch, just as Tilly and that other person whose name is, I want to say Rana, something with the R, as the two of them are gasping their last breath. He flips the switch, which they couldn't find fast enough with their scans from the ship or with their retinal scans or any kind of scan. They couldn't find where the switch was, but the guy knew where the switch was, but he didn't want to tell them because the ritual had to go through to please the gods. So Burnham finally convinced him. He flips the switch. They run in. Dr. Colbert comes down and like goes and treats them medically and stuff like that. Everybody lives. The day is saved. In addition, there's a whole thing going on in season 5 with needing clues, and they find a clue inside the tower, so it worked out. But I really like this episode. Like, there's parts of this episode that I think is so fascinating. One of the things I love that they only did for like 1 second, and I wish this would have been more of the episode, was the name of the episode is Whistlespeak. And these people communicate over long distances using whistles. So their whistles are a language. So that way they can communicate over distances because they don't have the higher levels of technology. They don't have cell phones. They don't have regular phones. They don't have anything like that. They might have runners to send letters. So I thought that was super interesting. And they even played some samples of whistling, which I thought was so cool. But unfortunately, when they get to the planet, there's like nobody whistling. And that was kind of disappointing because I wanted to see that in action while they're on the planet where they hear the whistles and then they see people doing the whistles. But they didn't. They just get to the planet and they're just like, okay, time for the race because we're all dying of thirst. So I do wish that would have been more, but I thought it was a really interesting thing. And you also get to see Burnham totally geek out about her xenobiology background and her love of languages and cultures and stuff, which I thought that was really cool. And she's breaking down all these interesting things about this culture, which is nice because we don't really learn any of those things on the planet because they get to the planet and it's just about the race. But anyways, I liked it. Okay, we have 1 episode left, so I'm going to check the chats and then we will hit the last episode on the list. Yes, Discovery. That's right, Discovery. Mr. Captain says this was a Trekkie-like episode. Could see this in the mid TNG episode range. Then we have a lot of eye rolls from Gavin and PS2 Chipper. Gavin says you're only allowed to save Data's pen pals. Little Sarjenka. Dustin says this episode was a different concept. At least it wasn't just a well-recycled trope. Yeah, it was the same idea, but they did it differently, right? And they made a better choice than Picard, leaving the people on that planet to just lose their atmosphere. That just seems so un-Picard-like to me. Star Trek tech, always janky looking back. The TOS communicators were far less capable than an iPhone. Okay, I was just talking about this to a Trekkie friend of mine, though. Those TOS communicators, do you remember when the Razors came out, those flip phones? And now flip phones are back, by the way. But when Razors came out, I am so certain that they were designed based off of the TOS communicators. Like that flip just looked cool, and they were like, we should make something that can do that. We should make something where people can be like, click. I mean, that came straight from TOS. So, I don't know. I think it's cool. Recycling tropes uses 60% less materials. That's hilarious. I am turning green. Why are you turning green? Okay, so let's look at the very last episode on the list. This one is my favorite of all of them. There's yet another fissure in space, and it's the third one this week. This time, a purple Enterprise D came through the rift briefly while fighting evil clones of Tasha Yar, or something. Unfortunately, they also left behind some future tech on a nearby pre-warp planet. Mariner, Tendi, and T'Len are sent out on an undercover away mission to destroy the technology and make sure they don't break the Prime Directive. The only catch is that 1 second of time on the Cerritos equals 1 week of time on the planet. After Boimler and Rutherford accidentally spill their drinks on the transporter controls, the week-long mission turns into a year-long mission. And this sets the scene for our A and B plots during Lower Decks Season 5, Episode 7, Fully Dilated. This episode's the best. It's just the best. It takes all the tropes from all the other Star Trek shows where they ever do something like this, and then it just makes it even more ridiculous, which is what makes it amazing. And Mariner even points out, she's like, oh, I want to be like the Inner Light where Captain Picard did that. I want to fall in love and have a family. I want to do that. Like she's on this mission to recreate exactly what we've seen in all of these other shows. And T'Len and Tendi are just kind of like, okay, they're just like, fine, Mariner, just go do that. You know, and they're both focused on totally other things. T'Len becomes this like a master of the culture. She ends up inventing all these things so that they can have money, because now they're stranded here for a year and they don't know how long they're going to be stranded here. So T'Len's like, okay, we need to live here. So what can we do? I think didn't she build a windmill in the back for electricity or something like that? She's like building all this crazy stuff. She created these gigantic like grapes instead of small grapes. And Tendi was like, isn't that breaking the Prime Directive? You're like messing with their agriculture. And she was like, no, this is like using naturally found whatever. I just enhanced it. So they have these like gigantic grapes. She also created some kind of hair tonic that makes the people's hair like long and shiny. So T'Len is a full-on entrepreneur. She's making crap tons of money. She's like the richest person in this town. So that way, however long they have to live here, they can live in style if they want to. Mariner's running around trying to find the love of her life or get a best friend or do something that she can only do in this, this accelerated lifetime. And Tendi is freaking out because she and T'Len are both up for the science position, the science officer's position. And she feels like T'Len is just way better than her and she's super insecure. And so she's trying to out-science T'Len. So while T'Len is out here making money and Mariner's out here trying to live her best life, Tendi is driving herself crazy trying to out-science T'Len. T'Len has no idea that there's this competition going on. And they found Data's head. And she's found a way to like reanimate Data's head with like a hand crank or something that she does to like give juice to Data's decapitated head so he can talk to her. And she's like not sleeping. She's not eating. She's like, I have to beat T'Len. I must become chief science officer or whatever she's going for. And Data's trying to talk sense into her to be like, do you think you're pushing it too far? Are you sure there's even a competition here? It's just a great episode. And of course, in the end, it's fine. And she finally tells T'Len, like, I thought you were trying to beat me. And T'Len's like, I thought you just didn't want to be my friend. It's really cute. And then Mariner's like, I realized that everything I was searching for, I already have. It's just like really sweet. The moral at the end of the story is really fun. The episode's hilarious. And it just like, it reminds me of all these other episodes, but in such a lighthearted and free way. If you have not seen this episode, I highly recommend it. If you have not seen Lower Decks and you like Star Trek at all, I recommend you watch it. I know it's not for everyone. It is animated. It is a comedy, but it's also a love letter from superfans to superfans. So all the beef that you have about Picard, Discovery, Strange New Worlds, That should not be there with Lower Decks. Lower Decks is written by fans for sure. Like every little detail is, you can tell these people love the show and have seen it 1,000 times in order to create this whole entire show, this whole experience. So definitely recommended. I think season 5, which is the last season of Lower Decks, is the least strong season. I don't think it's as strong as season 4, which I really enjoyed. But it was still good. Like, it's still good. You know, I think all the episodes are really fun. And this one was probably one of my favorites of all of season 5. This one, and then like another one that I really enjoyed. So that's my list. I'm going to check the chat one more time, and then we will be done. Purple Time, good choice. Thank you. Best new Trek series. It's not purple enough. That's funny. This was hilarious. We're from the North. Yeah, we're from the North. I also liked that when they got turned into the locals, that they all had different skin tones. I thought that was a really thoughtful choice, that they weren't all the same shade of yellow, but they all had like a different skin tone. Yeah, super fun episode. Data was so great in this episode. Everybody was great in this episode. They had some like guy who was onto them the whole time, and he was just like the town creep or whatever. That whole storyline was really funny too. Because yeah, you would have somebody who's suspicious about these people who just showed up all of a sudden and have a really sketchy story. Kevin says, who watches the Watchers is the winner. Okay, let me know in the chat which episode you think was the best example of undercover Trek from the list. We had Who Watches the Watchers from TNG. We had First Contact from TNG. We had Strange New Worlds. That's the name of the episode, from Strange New Worlds. We had 4.5 Vulcans from Strange New Worlds. We had Whistlespeak from Discovery. And we had Lower Decks, Fully Dilated. So let me know in the chats, or let me know in the comments who you think had the best example of an undercover Trek moment. And or First Contact. Yeah, like, what do you think? Like, which one do you think? Let me know. And I will read that later on. I'm seeing a few votes for Who Watches the Watchers, one for Lower Decks, one for First Contact. Yeah, so many good episodes. So I want to say thank you to everyone who is watching live. Thank you to everyone who is watching on the replay. And I will see you next time.